5 Chinese warplanes entered Korea Air Defense Identification Zone on Monday for what China is calling a, quote, ordinary drill.
Chinese warplanes crossed into Korea and even Japan's Air Defense Identification Zone on Monday.
According to South Korea's Joint Chiefs of Staff, 2 bombers and 2 fighter jets appeared from the southwest of Korea's Yeodo Island. They flew into Korea's Air Defense ID Zone and the area where the zones of South Korea, Japan, and China overlap. They reached Japan's zone and then returned to China. One reconnaissance plane that flew for 2 hours went even farther east, up to waters off Japan's central Kanazawa City. South Korea dispatched aircraft for surveillance immediately after the planes were detected. China said it was only an ordinary exercise and that it won't violate Korea's airspace.
Our Defense Ministry correspondent Oh Jung-hee provides a closer look.
5 Chinese warplanes entered Korea Air Defense Identification Zone on Monday for what China is calling a, quote, ordinary drill. According to South Korea's Joint Chiefs of Staff, 2 H-6 bombers and 2 J-11 fighter jets appeared from the southwest of Korea's Yeodo Island. They flew into Korea's Air Defense ID Zone and the area where the zones of South Korea, Japan, and China overlap. The planes reached the Japanese zone and then returned to China. One Tu-154 reconnaissance plane that flew for 2 hours went even farther east, up to waters of Japan's central Kanazawa City. South Korea dispatched aircraft for surveillance immediately after the planes were detected. South Korea's Joint Chiefs of Staff say the Chinese side has told South Korea over the military hotline that this is just a routine exercise and that it won't be entering South Korea's airspace. But the exact intention of China's flyover is still being analyzed. China's defense ministry also announced that this was a planned exercise and did not target any specific country or region. But speculation is rising as to why the flights had to take place just after South Korean President Moon Jae-in wrapped up his visit to Beijing.
All military actions have political implications, and it's been only 2 days since President Moon came back from China. China is taking a 2-track approach that it won't step back in security terms, even if Korea-China relations are recovering.
Chinese military planes have entered Korea's air defense zone multiple times since China unilaterally declared its own such zone in 2013, which overlaps with parts of Korea and Japan's zones. The last time was in early January this year when 12 warplanes crossed into the South Korean zone.
Though Beijing says it was a planned ordinary drill, what's puzzling is the timing, just 2 days after President Moon completed his state visit to that country.
President Moon Jae-in and Chinese President Xi Jinping unveiled their 4 basic principles last night for dealing with North Korea's nuclear issue. The 2 leaders made some progress during their summit in Beijing, but when it comes to the issue of the U.S. THAAD missile defense system, clear differences remain. Our chief Blue House correspondent Moon Gun-young traveling with the president for us.
Agreements remain agreed, disagreements remain disagreed. That basically sums up the 3rd bilateral summit between South Korean President Moon Jae-in and Chinese President Xi Jinping here in Beijing in what had been coined as a highlight of President Moon's first state visit to China. The goal of the South Korean leader's first visit to China since taking office in May has been crystal clear from the get-go, mending bilateral ties strained by a dispute over the deployment of an anti-missile system. That feeling was mutual on Thursday as South Korea's first couple were greeted by their Chinese host at the Great Hall of the People in the heart of Beijing.
오늘 회담을 통해 양국 관계를 한 단계 더 격상시켜 발전시키고 평화 번영의 역사를 함께 써나가는 아름다운 동행의 새롭고 좋은 첫 발걸음을 함께 내딛게 되기를 기대합니다. 감사합니다.
China-Korea relations and the situation on the Korean peninsula are at a critical stage now. As friendly neighbors and strategic partners, China and Korea share extensive common interests and wide cooperating prospects in maintaining regional peace and promoting regional development.
In a meeting that lasted well beyond the initially scheduled half an hour, reaching 2 whole hours, the two leaders managed to reaffirm their positions on two primary sticking points: North Korea and Seoul-Beijing relations that nosedived over China's objections to South Korea's THAAD deployment. On North Korea,
the two leaders agreed on the principles of no war on the Korean Peninsula, a nuclear-free Korean Peninsula, resolution through dialogue and negotiations, and that improvement in inter-Korean relations in the end help ease tensions.
And over the issue of THAAD.
President Xi reiterated China's opposition to the deployment and said he hoped South Korea would continue to appropriately handle this matter.
But the Blue House official added that there was an air of positivity unseen from their last encounter, relaying Xi's remarks that the Chinese leader hoped the two countries' bilateral relations will never have to go through such a setback again. Presidents Moon and Xi also decided to keep all forms of communications open to better foster dialogue between the two leaders. Has Mr. Moon's China trip helped dig out the frosty South Korea-China relations from its darkest hour? Will this chart a new path for a new chapter in South Korea-China relations? That will determine in the next few weeks, which will be crucial for this very important relationship in Northeast Asia.
One of the most significant diplomatic trips for Korea this year, President Moon Jae-in's first state visit to China. It comes after the long-standing row between Korea and China over the deployment of the U.S. missile defense system THAAD. As expected, President Moon spent his first 2 days in the capital city Beijing, during which he met with Chinese President Xi Jinping and Premier Li Keqiang to discuss the future and development of Seoul-Beijing relations. But as is the norm for Korean state visits to China, he is visiting another city. This time it's Chongqing in southwest China. President Moon Jae-in's choice to visit Chongqing is turning much focus toward this relatively unfamiliar city. But given its regional characteristics and historic background, experts are hopeful that this visit will help boost bilateral relations. During World War II, Chongqing housed the headquarters of the last Korean government in exile, in which Moon's predecessors organized the movement for independence from Japanese colonial rule and laid the foundations for modern Korea.
The president's visit to the Korean government in exile in Chongqing reflects back on how the leaders of the two countries actively communicated at the time. In the long run, meeting the city's leader, Chun Min-ar, could also lay the foundations for future relations, as he is a close ally of President Xi and one of the potential future leaders of the country.
Chongqing is also home to several of Korea's biggest companies, such as SK Hynix and POSCO, as well as Hyundai Motor, which the president is expected to visit on his trip.
President Moon's visit to Chongqing shows a strong interest in the city, which could be a huge boost, helping encourage local companies in the region collaborate with the Korean companies there.
The city's landlocked location also gives companies the upper hand in expanding into the innermost regions of China.
The traditional places for expansion, such as Beijing, Shanghai, and Shandong province, are saturated markets with high competition. In contrast, the Central West area of China has strong buying interest, which is yet to be fully explored by Korean companies, so they can really use it to their advantage with the right marketing.
More importantly, the key word when discussing economic opportunities in Chongqing is China's Belt and Road Initiative. The BRI is a major project proposed by Xi Jinping that aims to connect Eurasian countries by bridging the gap in infrastructure to accelerate economic growth in the region. Experts say that because of the role Chongqing plays in this huge nationwide project, President Moon's visit to the region should hopefully pave the way for Korea to also participate in the project.
The BRI passes through Chongqing, and considering its strategic location, South Korea needs to think of ways to make use of it and get on board the project.
President Moon Jae-in made it clear not long after taking office in May that one of his main economic goals is to improve Korea-ASEAN relations and proposed the new Southern Policy. It aims to boost trade with ASEAN countries to more than $200 billion a year by 2022. Experts say that while paving our own way when expanding economic relations is a good start, being a part of BRI would boost these efforts.
신남방 정책이라는 것이 있지 않습니까? 우리가
The South Korean government's new southern policy aims to improve diplomatic relations with ASEAN countries. China's Belt and Road Initiative also happens to pass through this region. So we need to create a codependent relationship with China, so they also need us.
President Moon's visit to Chongqing and China overall is just the first step for the two countries in thawing diplomatic relations. But pundits remain hopeful that the state visit, along with the additional South Korea-China free trade agreement talks coming up this month, will bring mutual benefits for both countries.